Another example, at the middle school level, there's been some research done. Did you know that if a teacher stands outside their doorway during transition time of period, during an interchange of class, you will literally reduce discipline problems by 30% just by standing in the hallway. That is a primary prevention measure, and that's research, okay? Another one is if you're not having assemblies, monthly assemblies, or you're not having weekly assemblies, there's some strong evidence to suggest that if you have these assemblies and you're starting to recognize student achievement and student behavior at these assemblies, you are setting up a good positive climate and culture in your school. That is a primary prevention measure. And there are numerous primary prevention measures. I know there is one school in my county, in Murfreesboro City Schools right now, that has a voice, a voice depth sort of meter, where children are told that if they get a voice of 3 and the teacher will just hold up a finger showing 3, that's a little too loud. That's a 2, that means still a little too loud, you need to quieten down. When you get to a 0, that means you're now quiet. And everybody in the school is trained to do that, that, and that. And everywhere that child goes, they're going to see that, that, or that. And they know exactly what that means. It's interpreted because they have these systems in place. Now, those are just 3 very simple examples. You might want to consider other things in your primary prevention measures. Let's move on to the upper part. All right, the next part is called your secondary prevention measure, and that's that middle blue part. Actually, it's not, if you want to correct that, it's not the whole thing, but it's specifically looking at the 15%. This assumes your 15% is your at-risk students. These are students who are at risk of failure. These are students who are at risk of getting poor grades. Now, what is a student who is at risk? A student who is at risk is someone who is often late, does not complete assignments, socially deviant, isolated, not bringing books to school, not following along, oppositionally defiant. That would be your category for at risk. In this at-risk population, we should have about 15%. That's according to this model. So if you have a school population of about 1,000 students, conceivably according to this model, you should have about 150 students who would qualify to be at risk. Now, when we come out and train you to work with this targeted 150 students, we use a process called check-in, connect, check-out. I'm not going to spend too much time on check-in, connect, check-out, which is this strategy that I will be spending an entire hour in October to talk about. So if you're tuning in, this workshop is actually developmentally sequenced so that you will attend the next one. You will get to know how to operationally put into place the check-in, check-out model, okay? It's actually check-in, connect, check-out. And basically, I'll just give you a little summary of what it is. Student checks in with a check-in coach, connects at midday, and checks out. And there is data gathering. There is a sharing process. There's an exchange between student and the check-in and check-out coach, and they continue over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, and I will continue talking about that in October. And the next piece is called our tertiary prevention. The tertiary prevention actually is probably about 5%, will apply to about 5% of your students, okay? In your 5% of your students, we also should be considering targeted intervention at this particular level. The 5% are students who have abused alcohol, who's been involved with issues with the law, has been probably hurt someone. These are students who've been extremely violent. And currently, we do not have anything in place to serve this 5%. So in this model, what we do is we create what's called a wraparound service, And this wraparound service also, what's beautiful about it, it mobilizes all of your community resources. So if you have resources in your community from social work, you're going to get your social work services involved in your tertiary. When you get, if you have services from your juvenile justice system, you might even have to meet with the local judge to talk about your program. So you have to bring this wraparound service to the student that's experiencing this difficulty, okay? And what happens here is that the school psychologist gets involved, the school counselor gets involved. You might even, I know some schools, what they do is they actually put them in social skills training programs mandated after school or in school for a good social skills training program. So you could do that as well, okay? And these are students who exhibit high risk types of behaviors. Okay, so Dr. Khan, where do we start? I love what you're saying, but tell us where to start. Well, here we go. First of all, what we'll do is we'll come down to your school. What we like to do is operate within your local culture, your local context, and we want to find out what is it you're doing currently, because I know you're doing some good stuff out there. Then we're going to do an assessment and evaluation of that, and then one of the things is we're going to try to get your common values. What do you guys believe in as a staff? What do you believe in? What are some of your ideas of what good teaching is, what good learning is? How do you go about working? What kind of behavior management philosophies do you have in there? What kind of school rules do you have? So we'll be trying to identify these common values, because we want this to work for you in your local context, in your local culture. We do not want to transport another ideology from another school system and clone it on you. We want this to belong to you, okay? And that's what's also beautiful. Something else is, I believe that every school has a dream. Every child has a dream. Every school, every child has a dream to excel. And to do that, we must be open to respect for diversity. We must be open to creating an environment that is safe. Everybody feels like they're welcomed. Everyone has friends. Everyone feels success. Everyone maintains high standards. And the goal here, folks, the big goal is, once we get this in place and we recognize the dream for us as a school, we can move ahead, okay? And that moving ahead is where we actually come in and train a PBS team in your school system to be able to put together this dream based on how your school wants to support it with your resources, okay? Here are some examples. Let's take a look at analyzing an office referral. Let's look at how PBS really looks really hard at the data. And the data you see right now, you can actually produce this on an Excel spreadsheet, or better still, if you have this program called Swiss, you can actually, this will pop up and you'll be able to see it on a sort of a pie chart. Here's what happens in an office discipline referral. If you look at this, you will notice that you'll be able to tell real quickly, according to the setting, where most of your discipline referrals are coming from, okay? So we break this down for you. We look at the classroom. Is it coming from the art? Is it coming from the bathrooms? It's coming from music. There's one more that's left out here. Who knows what it is, where you can get a discipline problem? It has wheels. It has rubber. Thank you. A huge part of our problem is also on the bus. So we can also assess that. So we want to look exactly where is the problem. So if the problem is not in the classroom, why should we address it? If the problem is more on the bus, that 80% of our discipline problems and referrals are coming from a bus, we need to look at what we need to do to create a system that's more effective and efficient, okay? So that's what PBS does. It goes in there with pinpoint accuracy to be able to find that. We also like to look at the behavior. At our school, when we analyze all of our referrals, right now, which one's the biggest? Which one has the largest number of referrals? Anybody? Physical harm. Yeah, it's a huge concern. Okay, so we can see really quickly that if we break all of our behaviors down and we look at it and we categorize it and we put it in percentages, we can anatomically with pinpoint precision say, Yes, physical harm is a huge issue. That's our target. That's where we need to bring all of our resources. That's where we need to bring our system to. That's where we need to get the help and support from our administration to get us to that point. Okay, so that's, and here's the intervention. What are the current interventions that we are trying that's probably working or not working? And I just put on a few. The IND is an individual plan. And sometimes we have to reteach, sometimes we have class meetings. A think paper is just basically putting your thoughts down on paper of why you're doing what you're doing, okay? We'll move on to the next one. If this happened, then we need to do this. The first one is, if more than 40% of your students currently receive more office referrals, or more than 2.5 office referrals per student, then we need to look at a school-wide system. What tier are we talking about? What level are we talking about when we talk about school-wide? Question. Primary. Thank you, Carol. Primary. So we have to address a school-wide discipline problem. And how do we know this, Carol? We know this because if we have 2.5 office discipline referrals per student, and that's a lot, okay? Or if it's more than 40%, okay? We need to consider school-wide, a school-wide situation. The next piece is if we have more than 35% of our office disciplines from a non-classroom setting, what would be a non-classroom setting? Anyone? Cafeteria, what else? Hallways. Bathrooms. Yes. So if that happens, then we start to focus on non-classroom systems and we look at those specific areas, and we might want to consider implementing some rules, some policies, and we address it with that. If we have more than 15% of students referred from this, we have to work on that. So this 15% mark and the 20% mark and the 40% mark, that is just a calibration, sort of a checkpoint for you as administrators, for you as teachers to look at and say, hey, Houston, we have a problem. Okay? And we need to address it the best way we can and put the resources where it's needed the most. Does that make sense?